feel more comfortable with each other as he learns to be more at ease in the social world. Children who are at ease and in control are happier and more willing to seek out interaction with others. It is only when your child seeks out your interaction on a consistent basis that you can truly teach him in a meaningful way. So this is just one example of what you would read in that book, and he gives a really good example of a child who has this bedtime routine, and he's told the parents, not through any sort of words, but just through his behavior, that they must read a certain book, turn off the light at a certain time, tuck him in a certain way, sing a certain song, do a little dance, and then he goes to bed. Well, he's used the principles of behavior to shape his parents to do all of those things, because when they didn't do those things, he would tantrum to make them do those things. And when the parents did do those things, he was happy, and then they were happy, and it all worked out really nicely. So he gives a lot of good examples of how your child already has this figured out, so it's about time you did. And it's really good to read and see how that all plays out. So some of the concepts from the book, this is one of the most important ones. It's called The 7 Steps of Earning Instructional Control. I could do a whole probably day workshop on just this, but we don't have time for that. So these are the 7 steps, and I'll just quickly explain what each of them are. Step 1 is that the adult has to be in control of the fun items. What this means is, as much as you can, anything that your child prefers or your client prefers should be restricted. And you could put stuff in plastic boxes, you could put things on shelves that are high as long as your child doesn't try to climb them. You could put them in locked closets, any way that you can. And it doesn't have to be everything, not all of their toys, but just their mostly highly preferred ones. Get them out of their free range and their free access. Because if they can just access those things on their own, what do they need you for? You're not important to them at all. And he suggests doing this, like if your child already has free access, don't just go home tonight while he's still awake and start putting everything away. Wait until they're in bed, and then, make sure you have a plan in place, and then you would put the stuff away. And this also doesn't mean they can't play with this stuff. What it means is, before they get to play with this stuff, they have to go through you first. So you can either say, hey, let's play with this right now and get it out. You can wait till they ask you for it and then say, sure, here you go. You can wait till they ask you for it and then tell them they need to clean up their room first. You can wait till you have to cook dinner and then give them the items while you cook dinner. They're engaging with the items. But however you do it, the point is they go through you to get the items. The step 2 is to have fun. And what this is pairing is what we call it. And it's basically building up a relationship with your child or your client. And pretty much like 80% of the time, you should just be a clown and having a great time with the kid and being really fun and interactive with the child. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Yeah, not so much, especially with children with autism, because a lot of the times we don't understand what's fun for them. What's fun for them is completely different than what's fun for us. So I have another section on pairing in a little bit, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Number 3 is really important. Mean what you say. How many of you do this? Hey, can you pick up your toys? And the child says no. Oh, I'm sorry, you still have to do it. Well, you asked if I can, or do you want to pick up your toys? Well, you asked if I want to. So no, I don't. I'm just going to keep them here, thanks. That's not meaning what you say. If it's a choice, present it as a choice. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this or this? Show them a visual. If it's a demand, present it as a demand. It's time to pick up your toys. It's time to sit down. If you don't think you have time to actually present a demand because you have to be somewhere, don't present the demand, because then you won't be able to follow through on it. Just don't even bother saying anything about it. The other important part about this is if you present something as a choice, do you want to take a bath? And your child says no. Okay, well, you can have a few more minutes. You say that, and then in a few minutes, okay, now it's time to take your bath. So even if you mess up and you give them a choice, in a few minutes you can still say, okay, well, now it's time. And also with children with autism, a lot of them are very literal. So if you say, sit down, and they, get on their knees, well, that might be sitting down to them. You can't get mad at them for that. But if you say, sit on your bottom, or put your feet right here, and you are very specific about what you mean, then that's going to be a lot more clear to them. Or if you tell them one more, we're going to have one more question or one more piece of candy or one more whatever, and then you proceed to give them like 10, that's, not being consistent and not saying what you mean. Step number 4 is listening equals reinforcement. So what this means is every time your child or your client does something that you've asked them to do, you praise them or you give them access to a preferred item. What's nice about this too is you don't just do it when they do something really hard. If they're about to sit down or they're about to pick up a toy and you have a child who usually doesn't listen that well to you, go ahead and place that demand as they're about to do it anyway. So as they're about to pick up the toy, oh, why don't you play with your car? And they're already about to play with it, so of course they're going to listen. And then you praise that, wow, that was great listening to mommy. I told you to play with your car, and look, you're playing with your car. That way you can catch them being good, and you can reward them and build up their tendency to listen to you. It's kind of like the foot in the door technique with salesmen. If they can get one good answer, then they're likely to keep getting you, and eventually they're going to sell you that car or sell you that vacuum cleaner. It's the same thing with our kids. If we can praise 1 or 2 things that they were about to do anyway, then we can probably slip in something that they weren't expecting, and they're still going to listen to us because they're used to it. Step 5 is consistency. What this means is consistently provide reinforcement. So when you're first starting with your child, you would want to constantly be praising and giving them access to preferred items. So pretty much every good thing that they do, you would say, oh, that was great, high fives, good job, here's some tickles. If they're older, it might be something more like playing on the iTouch or listening to some music. But what people sometimes worry about with this is, well, they should just do it because I tell them to. Well, eventually you might get to that point. But if you have a child who won't even take a toy from you, they're probably not going to just do things because you ask them to. You have to build that up in the repertoire. None of us do things just because we're asked to. When we were little, were taught that we had to listen and follow directions, and we were praised by our parents. And even now, how many of you would go to work and then find out you're not getting a paycheck and still keep going? You're not going to do that. So think of this as their paycheck. And there's actually a really good quote from another author, Steve Ward, and I don't have it memorized, but it's something along the lines of, you should be more concerned about ineffective teaching than you should be about giving your child reinforcement. Like, if you're not able to teach them skills, that's a bigger concern than giving them a piece of candy or a high five or some tickles. Once you've been consistently praising and reinforcing, though, and they're listening really well, then you can fade that out a little bit. So if you've been doing every time that you've asked them to do something, you've been giving them a high five or tickles, then maybe do it every other time. And then every 3rd time, and you start varying it and fading it out so they're not dependent on, hey, where's my high five? And then that way you don't have a child who's constantly walking around. Do any of you watch Parenthood? Okay, so the kid, where's my sticker? Do I get a sticker for that? That does not happen in a well-run ABA program. We fade out the reinforcement so that it does not get to that point. Know your priorities. What are you trying to teach your child? And when are you teaching and when are you playing? The majority of the time you should be playing and having fun and then slipping in some demands. One of the things with knowing your priorities is also the skills you're teaching. If you're trying to teach your child how to request and they've never said a word ever, and they come up to you and say, cookie, but they're looking at the ceiling, or maybe they tap you really hard. Well, you're going to give them a cookie because they've never done that before. But if you have a child who said cookie a million times and they come up to you and slap you and say cookie, you're probably not going to give them that cookie because they should know how to ask you without, banging on your arm too hard. So you have to know what skill it is that you're looking for your child to do, and then be able to give them their praise and their reinforcement when they do exhibit that skill. Challenge